Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is MK, and in today's episode, we're going to go over how I set up a chart in Tradingview, as far as how I find my support and resistance lines, and a few other things I do as far as setting alerts, and getting a chart basically overall set up so that it's something that I can trade or actively track a coin so that I can potentially trade it. Now, if you're brand new to TradingView, I would recommend seeing my link in the description for the playlist that I have that kind of goes over some of the basics with how to set up your TradingView as far as settings and the different indicators if you want to kind of match what I'm using as far as the moving averages and the different RSI, stochastic RSI, and so on. So if you're brand new, see those first so that you can get your chart set up to look similar to mine. And then at that point, you can come back to this video and see how I actually set up a chart kind of from start to finish so that it's something that I can actively track and potentially trade. Now, if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's go. Now, if you're wondering why my beautiful but often dirty face is much smaller in this video than a lot of my other videos, it's because in this one I just feel it's important for you to see as much of the screen as possible as far as the price action for the coin that we're going to be charting, so just keep that in mind. Hopefully I stay out of the way. My face is obviously not that important for this video. Really, none of the videos, but hey. Alright, so we're on our browser on google.com. Let's just remind you browser defaults to. We're going to go to tradingview.com. And for today's video, I'm just going to choose a coin that's been around for some time, so it has some history. And we're going to go with Litecoin. So the ticker for Litecoin is LTC. I personally like to use Binance's charts whenever possible, just because in a lot of cases, they have a lot, more history than a ton of the other exchanges. So we're going to do LTC USDT, which is the Tether pairing, and I'm going to click this one that says Binance over here for Litecoin. Now, once this is loaded up, I don't care what time frame up here it started you out on, or if your indicators are here or not. We're going to start out by doing this. So if you do have your indicators up, go ahead and double click so that you don't. We're going to go ahead and just choose a time frame like the 4 hour. Now, our goal with any coin first, and this will depend on the coin, because every coin has a different history length, right? We want to be able to get the entire price action in our screen. So I've scrolled this in as far as it will let me, and you can clearly see that I haven't got it all. So now we're going to go maybe to like a daily time frame. See if we're able to do it then. Okay, so daily is allowing us to have all of the price action. Now I'm going to spread it back out so it takes up the majority of my screen. And then at that point, the first thing that I like to do is go up here and change it from candles to line. And I'll explain why in just a minute. I guess what I should have said is I will explain not in just a minute, but for a minute. Okay, so this is not a technique that a lot of traders like, or maybe a lot of traders don't use. I just personally like to do it whenever I'm on the daily or weekly time frame, just to begin a chart. Because the difference between candles and line is just where the candle closed versus a wick. You won't see the wicks. That's the difference. On here, you can see this wick all the way up to here, for example. Let me just put a line there so you can see for this example. Now if I turn the just a line, you'll clearly see that that may have wicked up to there during that candle, but the actual candle closed here, right? So I'm going to delete that. What I'm looking for when I very first start out on a daily time frame in this case, or let's say it was Bitcoin, so it even had more history, maybe I would have started out on the weekly, is I'm looking for at least 3 touches. That's just what's important to me. I want to see an area. So for example, I can see that this peak right here also as a bottom right here is support, here is support, here is resistance. If I'm holding my mouse over that and I click Alt-H, I'm going to go ahead and change that to blue. Blue is what I like to use personally. Now, you guys can choose your own colors, but blue is what I like to use for my daily or weekly time frame, just my higher time frame support or resistance, right? So we can clearly see that we had a touch there, a touch there, a touch there, a touch there. So this area obviously has acted as key support or resistance in the past. So that's going to be my first area that I'm going to mark with blue for a daily support resistance line. Now, if you followed my channel for a while, you'll know that in previous videos, I've always mentioned that support and resistance is a zone, not always one exact level. And one of the other techniques I use to kind of figure that out is we're going to go ahead and use this level right here, where clearly you can see this has been support here, kind of throughout this area, with support back here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put my mouse over that, and I'm going to click Alt-H. We have the amount of touches that satisfies my criteria for being a daily support resistance, right? But then I am going to toggle on the candles just to kind of see if this lines up good. So right here you can see these almost touch it. Here they do. Here they barely go below it. Now, depending on if price action is below or above, I tend to lean towards the side that it is. And what I mean by that is obviously if that's going to trigger coming this direction, the very lowest ones will probably be the first ones that act as resistance, right? Versus the other way around, if I was above that, I might want to bump this line up a little bit so that it starts triggering as soon as I hit the very first stronger levels of support or resistance. In this case, I'm just going to click choose a happy medium. I'm going to go right about there where these two line up perfect. Those two are really close and these two are just below. But you have to keep in mind that as these triggers, that it is actually a zone. You could actually think of this entire area, clear down to those wicks, as the actual zone, right? But for the sake of just creating my support and resistance lines, we're just going to move it like that, all right? So now I'm going to go back over to line again, and we're going to find just a couple more. Now, one very, very important thing you want to keep in mind when doing this, whether you're staying on candles or using lines or doing kind of what I do, where I do a combination of both, is you want to have, especially with these stronger support and resistance lines on a daily time frame, you want to make sure they're spread out decently. What I mean by that is you don't want a chart that ends up just having support resistance lines like every 2 feet, or every, not 2 feet, every 2 centimeters. Sorry, that was a dumb thing to say, every 2 feet. At any rate, so basically you can see these two are spread apart pretty good. I go up here and I can see this was support here, resistance here, and so on. So, I mean, I feel confident making this another line because you can clearly see that price action has interacted with this area on more than 2 occasions. 1, 2, 3 for sure. Wick below there with the candle, a couple wicks above, but that's clearly an area. And you can kind of see that my lines are getting spread out pretty evenly so far. I can come up here maybe to this area. Okay, we've got that 1, 2, possibly 3 close, 4. And we'll see if we turn on the candles for that, if I could adjust that a little bit. Okay. You can leave it where it's at. You've got kind of the underside of these 1s, 2s, 3s. We could always bump it up, and you kind of got the top side. I'm going to go ahead and just put it back where it was because that's pretty close. Again, that would essentially be a zone. But see, we're spreading these out pretty evenly, and that's kind of the overall purpose of this. All right, now I've added just a couple more. I added one more on the top where we can see it was support here, resistance here, and back here it was major resistance that led to the big downtrend here, right? And then I added one down here at the bottom where there was quite a few touches. Another thing to keep in mind is if you have some of your indicators in your way, like in this case the VPVR, it's not important to be showing right now while I'm charting the coin. So I can click this little icon over here, go up, turn things off like volume if it's in your way. In this case, this is the visible range, VPVR. We're gonna go ahead, click the eyeball to turn that off. That way it's just not getting in the way of the right side of my chart. At this point, you can go ahead and click on your candles and just see if anything needs to be adjusted up or down. Just kind of visually look across the lines that you've created, make sure they're spaced fairly evenly or close. They don't have to be even, that's not the point. The point is you just don't want to have a ton of support and resistance. It makes it really hard to trade. You need to focus on the strongest levels when we're talking about something like the daily. Levels where you can expect that if it does not break through, it's going to be major resistance, or vice versa. If it's hanging out at it, it should be major support, right? I mean, if it's retraced to it, it should be major support. So you don't want to focus on levels where, price action has moved through and, quickly. It hasn't been met with a major change in direction, right? Like in the case of this is a major change in direction, right? And then back here, major support. This level back here, huge support level twice here. Obviously, I guess it hasn't really acted as resistance. So some levels, maybe a little bit here. Some levels you'll notice maybe act as stronger resistance than they do support, or vice versa, stronger support than they do resistance. But at any rate, we'll go ahead and move forward. Now, from this point forward, I do just leave candles on. But now what I'm going to look for while I'm still in the daily time frame is any major patterns. Because as you zoom in further on the coin and add a few more support and resistances as far as what time frame you're actively trading it on, you need to always keep in mind is there some larger trend line that's going to be resistance once the coin potentially starts moving in the direction you hope it does, right? So I'm going to go ahead and move over to just this side of price action, and we're going to see, is there a trend line of any sort that I could draw? Now clearly, we come across here, that's not much. Now sometimes I will still add these because if price action pumps up at some point to here, there's a good chance that this trend line will at least temporarily act as resistance, right? So if it's something like that where it's only a couple of touches, I'll often just take that trend line, I'll set an alert on it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click and add an alert. And I'm just going to leave it on this one that says crossing only once. I want an alert just one time. I'm going to hit create, right? Then I'm also going to change that trend line to be a little bit lighter so it's not something that sticks out too much. Now we're going to draw another trend line that goes from here down across all of this price action. And I'm starting to see, okay, that's not maybe as valid as if I just, let's change it back to 2. Let's just say I come down here maybe, scrolling a little bit further. Okay, so this is obviously currently the trend line that's acting as resistance. So we put this like this, poke this up just a little bit, try to use either the candle wicks or candle bodies. Try not to use a combination of both. Choose one or the other, whatever lines up best. Okay, so we can see we have 1, almost 2, 3 touches there, right? So I'm going to go ahead, and this is also somewhat vertical in alignment with this other trend line, right? Not perfect, but close. Now I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that and add an alert there as well, because that's going to matter to me if that's able to break above that. And then at this point, we're going to go ahead and scroll into a little bit zoomed in time frame. I'm going to choose the 4-hour, just so we can see what price action is doing on this time frame. Now, I am addicted to alerts as it relates to TradingView. I really think alerts are your biggest friend as far as trading goes. So what I'll do at this point is I'll start adding some support and resistance lines that are only relevant on the 4-hour time frame. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-H just up here in the middle of nowhere, and I'm going to change this to white, and then I'll go ahead and delete it. I just want these support and resistance lines to be white. So then I'll come through here and I'll pick some of these places where I can see a lot of touches. Again, it's more of a zone, right? But clearly right here was resistance, resistance. The bottom of here was support, 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 little wick below. But for the most part, you can kind of see as it approaches this daily support resistance line that there's a chance it gets rejected beforehand. You know, say you were planning on opening up a short at that resistance, that could help you front run it a little bit by having the wicks on now, zoomed in, and seeing what it looks like on this time frame. So I'm going to go through and add a few more. Clearly you can see price action. Obviously here it was resistance, that wick there, huge wick here, you know. These obviously wick below it, they're going down to my daily. But you can see this little white line has been interacted on 3 or more occasions, and it's relevant on the 4-hour time frame. Let's see if there's anything closer to my current price action that maybe is relevant. I'm not seeing a ton, nothing that can really help, at least on this time frame. But I'll go ahead and add a couple more up here maybe in case price action ever breaks up to this height. This level, sorry, you got that resistance there, you know, resistance, 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 acted as support. And so that's just the reason why I'm separating the colors, obviously, is as I get alerts and then I'm looking at them, say on my phone, I need to know, is this a level that is super, super significant on like a daily time frame, or is this one of the levels that I've charted on a lower time frame? And one thing I'm going to do real quick before we move on is I'm actually going to change these to orange. Orange is actually what I usually use. I don't know why I forgot when I was making this, but orange is what I would use on my time frame that is just below daily. Now it depends. If I'm doing a chart that has weekly price history, then I still do start with blue. Blue just becomes my weekly, orange becomes my next, you know, which would be daily, and then 4-hour would be what I'm going to do next, which is what I usually use for green. But these are just my own personal preferences. But the key is you just need to know, obviously, when it hits those, which one it is for you. So in this chart's case, I'm going to put orange. I'm going to know orange isn't as significant as blue, and then the next one's not going to be as significant as orange, and so on. Okie dokie. Now I added a few more of my orange 4-hour support and resistance lines, and now we're scrolled into the 1-hour. And this is the part where I'm just looking to see what price action is currently doing. I know within the broader scheme of things, it's in a downtrend. I know within the last, 4 hours, it's obviously in an uptrend, but that's an uptrend within a larger downtrend, and so on. So our bias as we zoom in is always going to be, where's the next spot, if it is continue to go up, that it's probably going to get rejected and continue the overall trend in this case, which is a downtrend. And you would flip this to the other direction if you were in an overall uptrend. Like last year this time, we were in a bull market, obviously, right? Actually, we weren't quite there yet. We were at the 30K level, and I think it was July when it actually started to pump again. But last year, we'll just say like 8 months ago or something like that, obviously, we were in a bull market and things were going mostly just up, right? We were in a significant uptrend. Well, at that point, your bias would flip the other way as far as, okay, I'm trying to look that if this is to roll over, where's the next higher low, and the next area is most likely going to bounce so I can open up long positions. Overall, until you see significant changes in, the current trend, all you're really looking for on a bounce or a rejection, depending on the overall trend, is just the next area that you could potentially open up a long or a short. overall. Doesn't mean you can't do scalp trades the opposite direction of the trend, but the reason that they have the phrase the trend is your friend is you always need to have your bias that direction as far as what does the macro look, and in this case Litecoin's in a downtrend. So I'm looking at areas this could bounce to. The first thing I see, just zoomed into the 1 hour, is clearly we had this double bottom, and a double bottom would obviously just be an area where price action comes down, hits a support level, goes back up, comes back down a second time, hits a support level again. This area in the middle becomes what's known as the double bottom neckline. You can see that price action actually broke and has retested it twice. In fact, has almost made a little small double bottom now within that it's currently trying to flip a support. But now I can say, okay, what would be the measured move of this double bottom? We'll go down here and take kind of this, the average of these wicks to the top of here. We're going to clone this. And I'm looking for confluence with that measured move. That measured move kind of brings us up here. Now I'm going to put this is going to be green. This is going to be important on an hourly time frame. That's the color that I use. And there is confluence there because clearly you can see if it goes back up to there, this was previously to support, sorry. And this ultimately became a redistribution area where it broke down rather than broke up. And so now it makes sense, if Litecoin is to trend up, that at some point it retests this previous support as resistance. So that's going to be a key area that I'm going to set an alert. So we're going to clear out this mumbo jumbo real quick, get rid of all of it. And I'm going to go ahead and put that line, hold on actually, let's redo that super quick, kind of our measured move here. Cancel that out, I'm going to move this up to here. We're going to put our Alt H, and that's going to be green. And then I'm going to set an alert, right click, set an alert. This is going to be the first area that I want to see how price action interacts with, because depending on what Bitcoin's doing at that point, which obviously is the driver of this market, if this reaches that level, I may be looking to short Litecoin, because not only is that going to be an important level on the super zoomed in time frame, we also know when we were zoomed back out to the 4 hour that wouldn't be that far below this bigger trend line that we know would most likely act as some sort of resistance. So that's, you kind of just want to always start zoomed out and then work your way in. Now we're quickly zoomed back into the 1 hour, and I want to show you another couple places I would set an alert. Now obviously this neckline for this double bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt H there as well, and we're going to right click and put an alert there as well. And my thinking behind that is that obviously that was a level that validated this double bottom, right? It's bounced off it twice. If it comes back to that level a third time, that would start to worry me, but it also might be a spot to consider opening along if Bitcoin looks like it's about to bounce. On the flip side of that, if it were to come back down and lose that level again, then this whole move up here could be considered a bull trap. And if it were to retest this bearishly, or even come back up and retest this 4 hour zone, which right now it's acting as support and could come back down and act as support again. If it loses this level down here in green, which would invalidate the bullishness of this double bottom, and then bearish retests either this zone or this zone, I'd want alerts set at both of those so I could potentially open up a short on the coin, right? So I'm going to go ahead and clear off those scribbles that I just put. And we're going to go ahead and also set an alert here at the orange line. Again, like I said, I really just like setting a million alerts. This is definitely good for scalp trading. Obviously, if you're just more of a midterm trader and you're just looking for major areas, then you would go ahead and just set alerts at some of your daily support resistance lines and your daily support and resistance trend lines. Now, one last thing I want to finish up on this video, just kind of explaining to you that is another thing that I like to do as it relates to the indicators. Now, I'm going to use the 4 hour time frame for the example of this. I'm going to double click. I'm going to bring up my favorite indicator, which is the RSI, and I'm going to go ahead and double click this. And I like to look to see if there's patterns on time frames like this, especially if I know the coin is, you know, approaching potential resistance in this case, and I'm looking to possibly short it. I could see that this has kind of been in an uptrend, and this level here is kind of acted, or this trend line's kind of acted as support, almost support, you know, support. It's kind of at it now. I want to set an alert on that if it crosses that and breaks down, you know, at that point I may be considering shorting the coin. You know, say it breaks down, and then, you know, I like to put support and resistance levels on the RSI as well. So for example, let's say I put Alt H here. Clearly that was resistance, you know, it's peaked above it, but this is kind of a zone that's either been support or resistance. And right now it's trying to flip it as support, which is a good thing. But if it loses this trend line at some point and maybe loses this level and bearish retests it, The RSI can sometimes give you, help you front run the actual breakdown of the coin. So that's another one that I will often chart. Let's go ahead and get rid of those. Now I'm going to double click. Also, I can see that the stochastic RSI hasn't confirmed going back into this bearish area. The blue's there, but the orange hasn't followed it yet. So it could just end up swooping back around and going up, if Litecoin obviously pumps a little more. But at the same time, let's say I'm looking to long the coin as well, like the next potential long. I'll right click down here kind of towards the bottom of the purple, and I like to put alerts there as well. That way I know when the coin is approaching oversold. Another reason I do that is if this up here breaks down and bearish retests and I open a short right at that point based on that, I kind of want to know where to maybe close my short or at least bump my stop loss to break even, because obviously once a coin on a time frame like a 4-hour reaches oversold on the stochastic, there's a chance that it'll either go sideways or eventually obviously recover, meaning I wouldn't want to be in that short anymore. Now, do keep in mind when I post charts in my Telegram group, which I'll leave a link in the description for, that I don't post charts that have all these colors on them, right? Often I will make the same chart twice. I like the charts that I post in my group or that I plan on others to see and potentially either trade or duplicate to be as clean as possible. And to me, charts just look a lot cleaner when you don't have a bunch of colors everywhere and weird stuff going on. But as far as my own personal charts that I'm looking at and actively trading, this is the best way for me to keep track of the relevance of certain support and resistance, whether it's price levels or trend lines or so on and so forth. So hopefully this was in some way helpful to you. And this would be what kind of a finished chart would look like, at least for now, for Litecoin in this case. Now, just keep in mind, there's probably 1,000,001 ways that you could set up a chart as far as different techniques for finding support and resistance, different indicators, and so on. This is just the way that I like to set up my charts, so hopefully you found this somewhat useful. And as always, if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow. It's TA.